Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
The question isn't what are we going to do, the question is what aren't we going to do.
Sorry, we were a little busy with the whole life and death combat thing, and then you attacked Pops. Pops!
Whatever it is we look forward to, and whoever it is we're chasing, to that I say amen.
Keep this thing going. Pick a name. Go on the air. Talk hard.
To that I say, all right, all right, all right.
In this world, the headlines read of those whose hearts are filled with greed, who rob and steal from those in need. To right this wrong with blinding speed goes underdog. Speed of lightning, power of thunder, fighting all who rob or plunder. Underdog, underdog.
This is the Hulk. You can place the Hulk into the Rage Cage. With a few pumps of the Hulk inflator, you can make the Hulk grow in size. Rip out of the shirt. And break out of the Rage Cage. The Hulk comes complete as shown. Some assembly required from Fun Stuff.
Space Stars. A galaxy of heroes teamed together in an interstellar battle against evil. Blast off on adventures as big as the cosmos itself. Race, poised on the edge of time with Space Ghost and his young friends. Straight through the universe with Space Ace, Astro, and the Space Mutts as they spring into action. And somewhere deep in space, super danger threatens the Teen Force. Join the famed Herculoids in their new battles to preserve peace on the planet Quasar. Now get set for 60 laser blasting minutes of action, adventure, fun on Space Stars.
Imagine you enter the world of the Shogun warriors. They're on the move. There's Raideen with Delta Wing missiles, Dragoon with a star shooter, and Mazinga with a rocket launcher. The Shoguns. Imagine you command them to defend freedom, protect justice, and challenge evil. The Shoguns. They're ready to strike when you are. Shogun warriors, Mazinga, Dragoon, Raideen, equipped with their own gear, each sold separately from Mattel.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time you've been working all week long for. The time we officially... Let's hear some car horns out there going with the whistle. Everybody ready? All right. It's Friday, 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 Friday. I might be mad, but tomorrow I'll be glad, 'cause I'm a Friday, I'm not mad. I'm butt naked. I know.
Time. I said it's quitting time. I was the foreman. I was the one says when it's quitting time at Terra. Quitting time!
You are a wonderful person.
It's a party town. Friday evening. What a feeling, feel like singing.
Losing his mind. And I'm reaping all the benefits.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
All right, folks, welcome to another Friday Popcast. Hope you're having a great week out there. And this is a great way to close things out, is have some fun talking old school cartoons today. That's right. I've been down that rabbit hole, as many of you know, watching some old stuff, checking out cool old shows and comic books and stuff. So with me, Sequential Treasures, James himself, James Meeley, my friend. How are you doing, brother? What's going on?
Konnichiwa, everyone. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Just another day in paradise.
That's right. Well, we're going to talk about a couple of the old shows. Kind of wanted to kick off with Space Ghost because I think it was the precursor to some other stuff. And if you're a fan of some of the OG animation and then seeing how it evolves over time and learning some of the backstory, some of the different creators that are behind the scenes, and just kind of a fun little journey. And I've been down that rabbit hole. I thought James would be kind of fun to hang out with you and kind of do that a little bit here, my friend.
Hey, I'm a very well vested in cartoons. I mean, I've watched pretty much all of them growing up, so at least it seems that way. So yeah, it's definitely something that's in my wheelhouse of knowledge.
That's fantastic. And let me start with Alan Toth, because I really hadn't thought much about researching or reading much about Alex Toth, and I kind of went down that rabbit hole because of Herculoids, and it kind of came along a little later than Space Ghost, but I knew he had done some comics, but I didn't really know much about his stint in comics. And then he is sort of the great artist that no one really knows because he didn't stay in the industry. He has sort of he's like a super well-read OCD, kind of an obnoxious personality if he felt like he was right. So it's not a name that gets thrown around, and definitely not a lot of folks are, touting his name, but legacies in animation cannot be ignored, even if you're not familiar with his work in comics. James, are you old enough to remember, like I was, where like these 1960s versions were what we got to kind of see? Like it was this.
I do remember watching this stuff on repeat back in reruns back in the 70s. When I was very young, I do remember that. The classic animation, like Alex Toth is one of the progenitors of all that. And they really defined that style of the 60s and even into the 70s a lot. That their style was like that. That was like the style for animation that you really wanted. That was going on at the time. So definitely his indelible mark was like of just being the man of that time when he was doing this stuff. So yeah, I'm very familiar with this stuff.
And if you listen to or watch an episode, folks, you're going to find the crossover with the Hanna-Barbera stuff, and to the point where there are sound cues. There's little like dramatic moments, and it's literally like Scooby-Doo music or stuff like Johnny Quest stuff. It's like stuff that you're easily going to recognize very, very quickly. I think that there's a lot of stuff I was able to find kind of free, but it's not super common to find stuff for free. I'm not really sure. Definitely what I remember too, from that era. This imagery, this is the animation. I remember watching this very regularly as a young kid, long before Star Wars and other stuff came along later that just changed the game even further for me. But good stuff. Great action adventure type things that as a kid, I think there was also, I don't know, the kids and the monkey really were like there to kind of maybe get us in as kids, but they were never irritating either. And so when we got to like Super Friends, sometimes the pets and the kids were very irritating. Like I just didn't care. But with Space Ghost, I actually don't mind them. I think they're fine. I don't have any issues with them. What about you, my friend?
Well, I mean, I think it's just like there was like a certain naivete at the time. Like, if you stop and really think about it, like now as an adult, it's like, what's this guy who's with these kids that are not his kids? He's got these two orphans basically who he's got out there fighting against evildoers who are trying to take over the universe or whatever. It's like you're putting kids in danger. If you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, wait, who would want to put a kid in danger that way? But yet, back in this time, that's just how it was. And, the innocence, the naivete of it all. And that's really what's played up here, I think, in a lot of these classic cartoons is, it's just good against evil, very black and white stuff, very easy to understand. They weren't like trying to make you think very deeply about the stuff. And, it's really a lot of fun more than anything else. And so to me, that's where I see it as. It's like this is meant to be fun and entertaining. And it's not like meant to be something taken so seriously to be thought on very heavily. Just something to have fun with.
Very cool. Did you read any of the comic book, the new one?
No, I haven't gotten to the new Space Ghost book yet. Haven't got that yet.
They at least try to give us some context on why he would sort of look after them and take care of them. But yeah, I think the other thing too for me that was striking was how well like some of the names held up. Like Tim Matheson is the voice of Jace. Don Messick, of course, is a famous voice actor from that era. He does multiple voice, obviously from Zorak to Sandman to the Collector. Ted Cassidy, who people just knows from just all sorts of things, including Star Trek and I Dream of Jeannie, but more importantly, Lurch from Addams Family. He is one of the characters as well. So Alan Reed has a long list of stuff he's in. So.
Yeah, Ted Cassidy, he's one of those guys, like he was big doing voice work in the 60s. He's worked on a lot of these old Hanna-Barbera, more adventurous style cartoons. He did a lot of voice work on a lot of those.
So Google it up with the 1960s. So it ran for a couple years, and then that kind of paves the way for them to go, well, hey, man, what else do you want to do, Mr. Toth? Is there anything else that you want to do? And by the way, it is Alan Toth. James, does it bother you as much as it does me when you know what the correct pronunciation is and then you find someone who knows and then they don't get it right? Because it does bother me. It shouldn't bother me.
I don't think it bothers me that much because I kind of understand. It's like, most of the time you never met these people, so you never spoke with them. You never heard the pronunciation of their name. You're just going by what's there. But yeah, Alex Toth. I mean, it seems pretty easy in his case. Like Jack Kirby or guys like that. That's very easy to work with on that. So I mean, I never had much of a problem with that.
I watch YouTubers do video after video. A lot of Space Ghost videos have the wrong names. But that took me to Herculoids. Now, Herculoids is kind of a personal favorite. It's one that the grandkids and I have enjoyed watching little clips. If you're not familiar with Herculoids, the nice thing about Herculoids is it doesn't require a massive investment of your time and energy. They're like 8 minutes long.
Somewhere out in space live the Herculoids. Protect their planet from sinister invaders. All heroes, they're the Herculoids.
I don't know, kind of the hodgepodge group of people thrown together with these crazy creatures. And there's little adventures, and they're like 7 or 8 minutes long. I think they gave them 10-minute slots back in the day. There's only like 36 episodes, basically 18 times 2 kind of thing. So this is starts in the 60s. They bring it back in the 80s, like with Space Ghost. Xandor, Terra, Dorno are the 3 kids. Of course, then you have Zoc, this sort of like bat-winged laser dragon, and then Igu is the rock ape, and then the Tundro is the 10-legged rhino triceratops mix who shoots electric energy balls from the horn, and then Gloop and Gleep, these like gooey protoplasmic creatures are sort of like ground out. And yeah, this has been a fun one to revisit. I definitely enjoy catching these. I actually watched I watched a little bit of everything over the last couple of days. These tend to be a lot more frequent on YouTube because they're short. So for some reason, I guess YouTube puts those out there, allows some of those to land. Vintage Space Ghost episodes are a little harder to find, definitely not intact. And then we're going to get to Thundarr, which is its own niche. But yeah, Thundarr's got a massive cult following, so we'll get to that in a minute. But Yeah, did you, again, same thing? Like you kind of just remember it being on and watch certain episodes and that
Yeah,
kind of thing?
I remember watching it, and it was, the guy again. It was the simplicity of the time, like I said, almost like a naivete. It's just good versus evil. They just they don't really think too deeply on these classic '60s. I think it's basically a time when they're trying to start to market to kids on television, whereas they didn't really do that before. Now they kind of really said, hey, we need to market stuff directly towards kids, and so that's where I think they went with this. Was they kept very hackneyed, I think would be the proper term to use, like because it's very, very very simplistic in what they do. It's the good guys are good, the bad guys are bad, and you pretty much know where everyone stands. There's no more ambiguities or subtle nuances in what is done. It's pretty much what you see is what you get, and the good guys always win in the end, of course, and that's how it was back in those days. So I mean, yeah, I definitely, like I said, it's just a lot of fun revisiting this stuff because you see where things have gone, like all the great entertainment we have today. It all originates from this. Like you mentioned, how Space Ghost kind of gets started, and then like later on we get Star Wars. So I mean, like then where do you think that came from? This is the stuff that sort of laid the foundation for all that great entertainment that we have today, with the nuances, with the ambiguities, with all the various points of view and things of that nature that we see in our entertainment today. It all originates here.
Yeah, I really agree. The impact from Space Ghost and Herculoids on science fiction is really immense. Like, there's really just a lot of ingraining that love. And obviously, George Lucas is a little older than me. So when he talks about, Flash Gordon serials and things they were kind of on reruns, we would catch them from time to time, but they weren't really the staples in our life. They came so much before us.
Yeah.
George Reeves' Superman did, like, again, our love of superhero stuff was kind of fed to us a little bit with sort of like George Reeves' Superman, which was phenomenal for its time. So some of that's there, but this really showcased the market for sci-fi adventures in fantasy worlds, and it kind of there's several other examples that we could get into. I also think the other thing is, you were mentioning the animation, is these folks were bringing in just great talent, whether it be on the writing side or the artist side, even if it was just temporary, even if it was just for one here, one there. I think that was also interesting. And again, like you were saying with some of the animation, even though there's sort of like a lot of rudimentary elements, there's also a lot of detail and stuff that people have gotten lazy on with digital. And here I find this stuff to be very engaging because it was hand drawn. Like, you knew they were drawing every single cell.
Yep.
More ambiguity. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot more lessons than I thought. There's one episode where there literally is, all right, we're going to do like the G.I. Joe and talk to you at home about gravity. It was very abrupt, and that was kind of cool. I like that, though. Thought that was neat. There's also one about respecting life where they're like, there's a volcano erupting, turns out to be the Firebird, but the Firebird's really only attacking because it's protecting its egg.
Yeah.
And it ends with a conversation or the question that goes back to Xandor. It's like, well, what if this was our son? He's like, oh, well, then I guess I wouldn't have reacted this way. Like, so there's some interesting elements that are for like young kids. Again, it knows its audience. You were saying that, right? It knows its audience. It knows we're maybe age 5 to 7 is the earliest that you're getting in on this kind of stuff. Because I think you're before 5. Most kids don't have much of attention span for this kind of stuff. But once we were starting kindergarten, first grade, this stuff was on the cartoon cycles. We were watching and catching these different episodes. So again, folks, if you are familiar with any of those, I'd love your comments. These have all landed in some way, shape, or form over the years. The first round of sort of like DVD releases really kind of landed for all these shows back when there was like the 2010, 2011 Warner Archive sets. Those dropped. Those were a little harder to get at times because they were like, a lot of them were made to order. Ted Turner came in and bought up a lot of stuff, so they kind of made some of the rights move around a little funky. It took a little minute for some of this other stuff to drop. Now, I know that Thundarr has dropped on Blu-ray, but some of the other ones I don't think have, the Hanna-Barbera side. The other thing, too, I think the difference is with Herculoids, too, is I know it landed in a lot of comic books back in the day. A little here, a little there. They had like a superhero TV heroes books and things like that landed. So those were all
Well,
really pretty cool.
something I've noticed with a lot of these classic stories and stuff like that, and we're about to get into another one here with one of my personal favorites, Thundarr the Barbarian, is when you look into it and you see how many comic book creators were actually involved in the animation side. See, growing up, I never knew that kind of thing. Like that, the comic book guys were doing the animation too. But like you mentioned Alex Toth, you have Jack Kirby, you have Gil Kane, you got Rick Hoberg, you got Bruce Zick. On the art side, then on the story side, you got guys like Steve Gerber and Buzz Dixon and Jerry Conway, and I mean just a lot of creators who worked on these series that you never knew that they did the comics too, because like I didn't get into comics until like 1987. So I mean I'd watched a huge amount of animation before that, and I never realized that a lot of the guys who were working in the comics also were doing the shows I loved. And that's that's just one of these things I've learned over time, is like how much that cross current between the two was back in these days.
100%. Wasn't really that familiar with some of those details either. Obviously, Steve Gerber, by the time I got into comics, I was kind of like, oh, I knew him from, he was on Howard Duck. He's the Howard Duck guy, right? And then going back and you start learning some of these details, you start filling in some gaps and start realizing, oh, wait, look at the influence of Jack Kirby, because this is a character called Gemini. This is actually a character that's introduced probably in the first episode, I think. And obviously, there's a lot of dark side influence here, guys. It's
well, I mean, and the thing is, like when you're looking at the animation, again, especially here with Thundarr, if you watch in certain episodes, like one of my personal favorite episodes is called Raiders of the Abyss, and there's this one scene where you see the Raiders without their hoods on, and there's this Kirby squiggle line of shadow on their heads, and it's like you see that little squiggle, like, oh, that's the Kirby squiggle. That's what that is, and you just see it, and it's like that's awesome. To know that was probably some design of Jack Kirby that is now being used in the show, and it's like you say, so they're like the telltale signs are all there if you know what to look for. And the thing I love about Thundarr is, it got 2 seasons, 80 and 81, and then they canceled it, but not because of low ratings. It wasn't like the show was horrible and it failed. It was, get this, the violence in the show. It was too action oriented, I guess, for the times. They're like, oh, we got to tone this down. We can't have this kind of stuff on TV, and so they got rid of it that way. But like, I just love this series. Classic. I mean, like the image you had that I brought to you. He's literally the hero, the man on the white horse. The good guy. There it is. The hero on the white horse. That's what he is, and I love the great action in the stories, but also the fun stuff, like stuff that like you maybe will go over your head when you're a kid, but then when you watch it again as an adult, as I did. I just saw recently, last night I watched an episode. It's on this one station I get on my cable, and they play an episode every day, and I saw Stalker from the Stars with the alien vampire, and it's just so much great stuff. There you go. See, there you go. Look at that. That's the razor. Look at those squiggles on the head. That's like just so Jack Kirby. That's just so him right there. The squiggles are just so great. But I mean, I was watching the Stalker from the Stars the other night, and just the fun stuff, like the smart mouth of Ariel. She's always making comments. It's always annoying Thundarr. But see, you didn't think about that stuff when you were a kid, but now that you're an adult, you watch, and you're like, oh god, that's hilarious. The one episode, which one was it? I think it was the second episode of the first season. Was it Harvest of Doom with the Death Flowers? Yes, there it is. That's the one right there. And him and Ariel get dumped in this pit with these snakes, and he fights them off, and he grabs one, and he uses it like for a lasso to pull him out, and he goes, we're getting out of here, and he grabs her and slings him over his shoulder, and he's carrying her up, and she's like, do you have to carry me around like a gunny sack? And he goes, no, I could have left you down there. It's the classic stuff with this camaraderie between them. It's like that's the relationship in a nutshell to me. It's like they're both doing the right thing. They're both heroes in their own rights and whatnot, but yet they got that camaraderie going on. I always love that stuff in the show, and it's just one of the things that made the show so special. This is why it is a cult classic, I think, with people, because it's not just like I said, when we look at the early ones, like the Space Ghost and the Herculoids, it was kind of a little more simplistic, whereas Thundarr, they're getting a little more, again, into that nuance I was talking about, with stuff, where you see things happening that, are a little more not so cut and dry all the time. And I really love that about the show. To me, this is ripe for, like, someone should make a comic book series on this, or, bring back the cartoon, It's great stuff. And again, some of the people who worked on the voices, you have the great Alan Oppenheimer, who did voices in the show. You have Joan Van Ark did an episode as a voice of a character. The great Michael Bell, Duke from the G.I. Joe cartoon. This is years before he was a character in an episode. And of course, the great Robert Ridgely, who is Thundarr himself, and his voice. Whenever I read Thor comic books, I always imagine Robert Ridgely's Thundarr voice when I'm reading Thor's dialogue, because that's just to me, that's how he should sound. That's the Thor voice right there.
You get references later on. This is one of the episodes where they're there with the Ukla's group, and they have all these there's all these little pop culture references too, because obviously we're set, years into the future, everything's a wasteland, and the story kind of takes us around these ruins and different areas that remind us of our world. And there's Jaws poster there. You can see this one in the background. There's actually one. I don't know if you ever knew this or not. There's an episode where they're pulling up pictures, which turn out to be like movie posters, and there's one that's Revenge of the Jedi, which is before Star Wars. So I thought that was interesting. That was before Return of the Jedi. I don't know if someone leaked the Revenge of the Jedi, or if it was just someone mocking Revenge of the. I don't know, but it was a funny little reference that's in one of those. I think it's the very last episode. I think it's in season 2. But yeah, this was huge. Big deal back in the day. Lots of lots of love. Games, action figures. I love the action. This is an early episode. I love this one.
That's the first episode, the Curse of the Black Pearl.
Yeah, really good stuff. Some of it's just really cool. She's got like the whole little bit of the Wonder Woman design a little bit there. But she's really cool.
The thing here is going back to Ariel there. If you think about it, here's the thing is, she is, some people might look at her and go, oh, it's just another white woman, but she's not. She's actually Asian. But see, they never made a big deal out of it. It's just like, that's what she is. She's an Asian woman in the future. That's what she is. And, whereas today they're all head about like, oh, we got to be diverse and we got to have all these different factions and people shown and showcased. Here they just did it naturally, and no one cared. We didn't care that she was Asian. So what if she is? Yeah, she's Asian. So what? She's awesome because she got the magic powers, but yet, again, like all great heroes, she has a weakness. She needs her hands free to work the magic. If the hands are bound, she can't do the magic. See, and that's the great thing. So they really understood back then how to properly do that classic hero's journey stuff, and understanding how to make it. Like Thundarr, of course, he's very strong. He's got the sword. He's the man. But of course, he gets a little battle crazy sometimes. He's a little too head up to get into battles, and that's his weak spot. Is he doesn't think it through sometimes. He just acts on impulse. So you got heroes who are flawed. Whereas, like I said, like in the earlier stuff, like in the Herculoids and in the Space Ghost, the characters felt almost like they were too square-jawed. Like they were always knew the right thing to do. They never made mistakes. They were always on top of it. Whereas in something like Thundarr, now you're getting later into time, in the 80s, you're seeing, like I said, more of that nuance coming in with like characters with flaws, but yet they're still the hero. And that's what I like about this. Again, just one of the many aspects of why I think Thundarr is such a iconic, cult classic. Among not just people who love animation, but just people who love great entertainment.
Yeah, it's held up really, really well in this sort of like nostalgia era where many of us are going back and just trying to enjoy some really good content, and then like I am trying to share that and get that in front of new viewers. With in my case, it's grandkids, so that we can foster a love and an appreciation for this vintage content, if you will. And then of course the beauty of it all, like look at the animation, look at the details, the characters. I think that look, they didn't have to put moss on the walls in the background, but they did, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it adds so much depth and reality to everything. So I think this is one of those great franchises that hasn't really been revisited yet. I'm shocked that Dynamite hasn't done that, because they dropped their Herculoid comic this month, and obviously Space Ghost has taken off. There's been tons of stuff that has gone well for them. I've been very critical of the interior art of their comic book compared to what they can sell on the outside, and I would love to see this done proper. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But it's definitely a fun one. And definitely like yourself, there's a lot of folks that have sort of a cult love for this one, because it fosters that love of sword and sandals, adventure fantasy, high fantasy, because there's a huge world to explore, and the episodes do take you around different areas of the globe in this post-apocalyptic world that they definitely set up. So, yeah, fantastic stuff. Do you have a favorite episode that we should reference?
Like I said, my favorite episode easily is Raiders of the Abyss. I just love it because there's so much in the episode because you get to see so many different sides. Like you see in Ariel fights the wizard to get the cure for the humans, and she does it by herself. And then like later she's riding with Thundarr, and he's like, what is it? He goes, were you in danger? The wizard put up a fight, and she goes, that nice old man, don't be silly, Thundarr. And then Thundarr comes in with his classic, bravado. He's like, no wizard was ever nice, or any barbarian silly. Just because she's always smart mouthing him all the time. It's just, like I said, the camaraderie. That's the real secret. I think the key to the show's success is that camaraderie between him, her, and Ukla is just they're all good friends, and they're always going to have each other's back no matter what. But yet they still got the little frictions once in a while. And it really shows you how they had developed this style of animation and storytelling. As like I said, it started out in the '60s with Space Ghost, and then it gets here into the '80s with Thundarr. You can see the development of how they've got more richness to the stories, more storytelling going on with it, and that really adds a lot of layers over time, to what was again very simplistic at the start and much more nuanced later on.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. Yeah, this has been a good one. It's been kind of a fun journey over the last few weeks for me to kind of dive back into a couple of these old ones and then figure out how that kind of takes you. There is also, and I'll try to remember to put the link in the description, folks, of a great documentary about Alan Toth. It's called Simplicity. It was included on the DVD, but it's available now on YouTube, so you can get it there, and I'll put the link there for you. Likewise, I'll try to put the links there for some of the Amazon links. If it's easy, I know a lot of folks just use Amazon, so I'll just stick with that. It'll give you an outlet to get copies of DVD and Blu-rays where available as well. Maybe a t-shirt or two. I can find a couple of t-shirts. T-shirts tend to run at least $20. A little gets on a pricier side for me. I'm like, I'm not sure I want to spend $20, $25 for a t-shirt, but wouldn't mind having a t-shirt. So just saying.
That's good. That's Pop's way of telling you folks, if you want to send him something for his birthday or for Christmas, get him one of those shirts.
I would never ask anyone to do anything, but it was it's definitely one that's on my radar. I'm shocked they haven't shown up. Like we're in this era where so many people are embracing the nostalgia of their past. You seem like these are just easy licenses for even like places like Kohl's, which tends to have like a ton of pop culture shirts and stuff like that running through the place. My wife's usually getting stuff for me from there, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Target's another one that's like kind of stuff. So
it's not a surprise to me because, as we see like with the comics themselves nowadays, it's like, it's the older stuff everyone's going for because that's where the quality was. Just like with these shows we talked about, they had great quality in the shows. Even if they were a little hackneyed sometimes, even if they were a little simplistic in how they approached, the storytelling, it still had the quality there, and people can tell that. And that's why, you see the modern stuff today, nobody's really that interested. And they say, well, let's go back to the older stuff because that was stuff where the quality was. And so it's not a surprise to me to see like classic vintage, stuff getting T-shirts and stuff today, and people want to buy them because they know that the audience knows what's good and what isn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair. I mean, I get it, and I'm a purveyor of that. I try to find a balance with some objective conversation about newer stuff, but reality is my niche has evolved more into let's just talk about some good stuff too, and putting a lot more emphasis, and that does tend to have longer legs and appeal to people over a longer period of time. I think that with newer stuff, whether it be comics or shows or movies, they fizzle out so fast and then no one's talking about it. Like you're just not seeing great stuff. Like I came out of 2024 disagreeing with nearly everybody in the YouTube space. I didn't think there's a single movie. Now, I will admit I haven't seen Nosferatu. There's a couple other in the horror genre I hadn't seen. The claim is that one is like Godzilla -1. Like it's the one that will stand out and be the one that people will talk about. I have to wait till I see it. I do feel like Godzilla -1 is still that, but I just feel like that people don't talk about Godzilla as much as I would like. So I'm not totally sold that Godzilla -1 is. That takes me all back to Top Gun Maverick and the Spider-Man movie where I don't know if anyone would still talk. I think that they're brought up. People do love them, and that's the thing. But I'm not sure that I see people regularly going back to that because there's just so much good stuff before all the last 5 years. Just be honest, there's so much that's good. It's almost silly to waste our time with the latest fads. So, but yeah,
Well, I mean,
that's
it's because
great.
the latest stuff is just either retreads of what was already done, or it's just it just doesn't have the kind of because of political correctness, let's say, it doesn't have the kind of intensity that the classic stuff that we're talking about. Like they said, like they pulled Thundarr off the air. Why? Not because the show was bad, not because it wasn't bringing in the ratings, because it's too violent. We gotta tone that down, and never mind that it's a great show and it's lots of great animation and great storytelling. That didn't matter. It's we gotta get rid of it for that reason. And, that's just more what we're seeing today. Is like just that type of mentality that took away Thundarr is the same one that's kind of destroying all entertainment nowadays, which is why there is nothing, like you said, that really stands out in the last 5 to 10 years. It really stands out very much as like a classic. Like we're going to be talking about this, like the way we're talking about Thundarr today, they're going to be talking about this in 30 years, from now. And that's why we don't see that, is because they're too busy worrying about trying not to offend or trying to control a narrative, rather than saying, hey, let's put out some great stuff that people are going to enjoy.
I had to look it up to make sure I wasn't going to misspeak because I didn't know for sure which one it was. But I knew I had read this over the last couple of weeks. Thundarr is the one they took off the air because Paramount wanted to promote Laverne and Shirley in the Army, the animated Laverne and Shirley TV adaptation. So they dropped it, and then it ran over. So the reruns of Thundarr went over to NBC for another couple years later. So yeah, they dumped Thundarr for Laverne and Shirley, of all things. That's crazy.
Laverne, let's join the army. You what, Cheryl? Where do I sign up? I'm with you. A commanding pig? Shouldn't have done that, Laverne. Whoa! Help! Join the army, you said?
I know I read that somewhere. Yeah, it's nuts. There's so many animated one-offs from those 70s and the 80s. We'll probably get together and talk about. We probably have to do a list of 25 of these. You can't believe it's a thing, and tons of toys that could tie into everything too. That was the shtick back then. It's the era of let's do something animated, and then also let's just make a whole bunch of action figures and capitalize on that way for this particular IP.
That was the way in the 70s up through about the mid 80s. It was, you create a cartoon, not so much because you want to create a great story, although some, again, the people working on them did want to make good stories, but because, hey, we got a toy line, let's tie this into that, and we'll sell the toys by having the show on the air, and it'll keep reminding kids, hey, go out and buy the newest toys from this show you love so much.
Well, I meant even more so just even a movie that's inappropriate for kids. They'll do a cartoon and sell action figures. So they'll do a RoboCop cartoon. They'll do Rambo cartoon and sell toys. It was everything. It was a free-for-all. So Conan the Barbarian. There's a Conan the Barbarian animated series. So these were not movies that were really even targeting children, but it was part of this whole perpetuation of the IP, expanding the IP. I mean, the fact that there's a RoboCop animated series still makes me laugh. And by the way, folks, you can just put in RoboCop cartoon or animated series. The entire playlist is on YouTube. I think there's 12. I don't think there's very many. It didn't last very long. But there's channels I think it came from the 80s channel. I think is one of the best ones out there. He does a good job of putting together this kind of stuff. But there's many of those guys, Retro TV, and our own friend of the channel, Resolute Germ. So.
And one other thing I'll add is I think a lot of these classic ones we just talked about, one of the things they had in there that you don't see so much today, again, which is another reason why stuff today doesn't land so well, is, the masculinity, or what they would refer today as toxic masculinity. I mean, Thundarr, again, he's classic masculinity. Space Ghost, classic masculinity. The Herculoids, classic masculinity. And that's something you don't see anymore in like the action adventure stuff so much. They try to downplay all that kind of stuff and remove it as much as they can. And I really think that that's harmed a lot of the modern stuff, because you don't have that same, I think that's part of what gave the stuff such verve back in the day, was the intensity of that manly man, the strong-armed, square-jawed guy, and you don't have that today. And so again, that's another reason I think people reach back into the past, because they miss that in the modern stuff, and so they're looking for it elsewhere.
I just want story arcs and heroism and adventure and fun, and we can't get some of those rudimentary foundations. I think that there is just a major disconnect between the creative circles and those that are empowered and what they strive for, and then what the audiences actually truly want. So we'll see if the tide changes. But it fuels some fun talks like this one for sure. So
definitely.
Yeah. James, my friend, all the links are in the description, folks. Make sure you're checking out what James did. Now, you think I know about comic books. I know nothing compared to this guy. This guy is a savant when it comes to that. So make sure you go over and check out his channel, some of the different things that he's done. He's the guy that created the whole Why It's Great thread and line of comics that we talked about here briefly on my channel, but he continued over on his, where he just kind of finds something that's economical and just explains to you why it's amazing. And you can pick it up and why you'd enjoy it. And yeah, James, man, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me, talking cartoons of all things. That's always fun.
Hey, this was awesome. I love this. This was a lot of fun. I always be happy to get together with you and talk cool stuff like this, my friend, because that's what it's all about for me.
Well, folks, if you enjoyed the intro, enjoyed the commercials and little snippets and stuff that kind of led into our conversation, I'm sure you'll enjoy more of it, because that's how we'll close the show out too. Throw you some vintage commercials, action figure promotions, little teasers, little things like that that'll kind of keep scratching at this itch. So hopefully you do enjoy that. And have a good week, folks. Enjoy your weekend. Get out there. Do your thing, man. Be blessed. Talk hard. Until next time, I'm Pops.
Chuck Norris, Karate Commandos.
Break it up, crack it down, fight forces of evil wherever they're found.
Figures sold separately.
Location Tibet. Assignment: recover stolen microchip. Protecting it was Super Ninja. Hi-ya! First, Chemo stood up to him. Hi-ya! And was downed. Then Reed Smith flew in. Hi-ya! And was grounded. But now it's his karate against mine. Hi-ya!
Chuck Norris, Karate Commandos. Chuck Norris, Super Ninja, Reed Smith, Chemo, and other figures sold separately. New from Kenner.
To help them in their never-ending battle against the evil Decepticons, the Autobots create a new breed of robot, Dinobots.
Transformers, more than meets the eye. Dinobots, stand battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons. The Transformers.
The Decepticons are attacking! The Dinobots will get them! Can't beat the Dinobots!
Sold separately from Hasbro.
The Incredible Hulk meets Captain America, each a foot tall with flyaway action pack. Assembly required.
Just hook up the flyaway pack, and here comes Captain A.
Avalanche! This is a job for the Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk with a waist that's mean, lots of muscle and skin that's green. You can make 'em fly.
Captain America and the Incredible Hulk, both with flyaway action pack, each sold separately by Mego.